Well, howdy there, internet people. It's Spite again, and today we're going to talk about influences, CFMOTO, and a new style of content on the channel. This video is powered by Flying Eyes. Whether I'm riding on-road or off, they're my choice of sunglasses thanks to their thin and flexible stems, so I can ride for hours with no pressure points. Click that link down in the description below and use the code SC10 for 10% off your order. Now those who know will know, but clearly this is not my intro. This is a style of content that I kind of want to do to revamp the news that I cover on the channel. And it's kind of funny that I'm copying another news channel, but YouTube is iterative. Now, like I said, I did want to talk about CFMOTO today because they have released or unveiled their Voom 500, which is not a great name. However, this motorcycle is one of the coolest looking bikes, and it's the first time I've actually been interested in a sub 600cc inline 4 since Honda's Super 4. We don't have a ton of information about this bike because it was basically just unveiled, but essentially what we're looking at is an inline 4 500cc motorcycle that looks like a Papio SS. This thing was designed by Modena 40, which is a design company that has partnered with CF. I'm not entirely sure about the relationship here, but that is why this thing looks like a Husqvarna. And like I said, this is the first time I'm actually interested in a sub 600cc inline 4 because usually those bikes are completely gutless. You have to wring them out so hard. You're zinging them off the red line constantly. And there are plenty of people out there who have told me that's what they love about it. And sure, fine. But that's not the kind of riding that I enjoy. However, this bike just looks so cool that I'd be willing to suffer a pretty mediocre power plant on the street. And that's where I want to get to the greater point of today's video, and that is the motorcycle industry. You ignore CFMOTO at your own peril. I recently did a video talking about how bike prices have gotten pretty outrageous, talking about how Harley-Davidson is now charging $500 for Vivid Black, which is absolutely outrageous because when you think of a Harley-Davidson, what do you think of? You think of a giant black cruiser. Vivid Black was the default color, and now it's gunship gray, which is just primer gray. That's just a symptom. Generally, motorcycles have been getting more and more and more expensive. And I actually put out a poll yesterday that has over 2,100 responses to it at this point, which admittedly, that's a small sample of the motorcycling audience. However, it's shown me that 46% of people want a motorcycle under $10,000. And the next biggest category would be somebody between $10,000 and $13,000. People don't have the budget, nor do they have the appetite to buy gigantic motorcycles. So far, one of CFMOTO's most expensive motorcycles is their Ibex adventure bike, which is almost 11 grand. But this is where I want to bring in some data from other companies. The number one response of all the people I polled told me that you wanted motorcycles between $5,500 and $10,000. Usually that ends up being roughly 650-ish cc motorcycles, talking Ninja 650, all the way up to stuff like the GSX 8S, which has some higher horsepower figures. And I just went and did a little bit of searching based on what you could buy from two of the biggest Japanese brands. We'll talk about Yamaha and we'll talk about Kawasaki. Yamaha's XSR 700, which is essentially a fancy MT-07, is $8,900. Kawasaki's ZX4RR range, which is their neoclassic range in the 650 motor, is $95.99. The thing is, CFMOTO uses the Kawasaki 650 motor in their CLX line, and those motorcycles start at $6,900. Nice. And in both cases, we're talking about a neo-retro motorcycle that is cheaper than the alternatives with the same quality components. And in the case of the Yamaha, the CFMOTO is way better. Let's talk about ADV bikes for a second. The Tenere 700 is close to $10,000, and the Versa 650, which is the closest thing I could find from Kawasaki, the KLR 650, is a completely other animal. I know, because I own one. That Versys is just over 10 grand as well, whereas the Ibex ranges from a little over 9 grand to a little over 10 grand. And those motorcycles have bigger motors, more power, and more technology. Then we gotta talk about the category up, the $10,000 to $13,000 range, and there's not really a whole lot you can buy from CFMOTO in that category right now. The only thing that's close is the 800 NK, and that thing comes in at $8,500. If you're looking at something like the Z900, you're looking at anywhere from $94.99 to $11,399. Yamaha's MT-09, the base model, costs $10,600. Yes, in both of those cases, the Japanese bikes are faster than the NK because the NK is limited to 100 horsepower. But we also need to talk about beginner bikes because that's a massive segment right now, and with prices getting as big as they are, CFMOTO is absolutely dominating there right now. The Ninja 500 is basically a slightly bored out version of the Ninja 400, and because of A2 restrictions, it doesn't really make a ton of sense. You're dealing with roughly the same motorcycle for a little bit more cash, $56.99 to $58.99 based on what trim you get. And then if you look at Yamaha, which their prices reflect the quality here, I'm not gonna lie. The MT-03, 5 grand. That is a pretty abysmal motorcycle. And then the R3, which is very long in the tooth, is $5,500, whereas CFMOTO has a kick-ass cross-plane parallel twin little naked bike and sport bike in that category. And the NK comes in at $5,400, the SS comes in at $5,700. And as we're looking at with the 500 Voom, CFMOTO's just making newer, cooler motorcycles because I think they realize the lesson that it's taking everybody else a long time to learn. And that is, people just want cool motorcycles. They want cool bikes. They don't necessarily care if they're outrageously fast. Make a cheap motorcycle that people can afford, that looks badass, that makes you look back over your shoulder and be like, that's my motorcycle, and then sell it. And that right there is why you ignore CFMOTO at your own peril. There is a ton more to talk about with regards to possible caveats when you're talking about resale value and you're talking about reliability, which personally I have not encountered any reliability issues and nobody in my Discord has. I have a handful of CFMOTO riders. So I'm not worried about recommending a CFMOTO to you. And that's gonna wrap this video up. Let me know your thoughts about this new style of video. It's gonna be a little bit shorter than we're used to, but let me know your thoughts. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.